Hi, thanks for coming out today. We want to start off by thanking the public. As you know, there was a 4-year-old who suffered some head wounds as a result of what we called some road rage activity, and we were able to solve that crime, or at least arrest a couple of people in relationship to that. And we want to thank the public, because without their input and without their help, we would not have been able to do it as quickly as it happened. The other point I want to make is that we're currently at 70 homicides so far this year, and we have what we consider to be an unacceptable solve rate, and that is of 47%. And what the chief will be talking about once I turn it over to him is how do we increase our solve rate, because we find many times that crimes of violence, and whether homicide or some other form of violence, sometimes it's the same person who may commit multiple crimes in that regard. And so we want to solicit the public's help as we move to not only reduce violent crimes, homicides in particular, violent crimes in general, but we want to increase our ability to solve those crimes, to show those who would be inclined to do that, that it is fruitless for them to do these things and think that they're not going to be identified and apprehended for their violence. So, Chief, you want to take it from there?
Thanks, Mayor. Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. As the Mayor stated, we want to thank the public and the people that contributed to the detectives in the 3rd District in solving this crime, at least in getting the people that we feel are responsible off the streets. I want to quickly introduce Commander Thomas McCartney, who's the 3rd District Commander, Detective Ron James, who's a detective that worked on this, along with Detective Gina Gray from the 3rd District. They got this case early Monday morning, worked on it for about 12 hours, and within, I'd say, a day and a half, actually had the suspects identified and had warrants issued for their arrest. After that, we turned the case over with the warrants to our U.S. Marshal's office, who I'll bring up Special Agent Carter here in a second, and we're able to get both of these suspects into custody shortly thereafter. So I definitely want to thank our partners with the U.S. Marshals Service for their help in bringing these guys back here so that they can stand up for the crimes they committed. The Mayor also talked about our homicides in the city. We're at 70 now compared to 61 last year with a 47% solve rate. And that is not where we want to be as a city, not just in the number of homicides, but of course in that solve rate also. We definitely want to solve 100% of the homicides and the other violent crimes that happen in the city, but that only happens with a lot of dedicated work from police officers and detectives and our partners, but also with the community and the tips that we receive from the community in solving these crimes. So with that, we are going to set up this Sunday a tip line for unsolved homicides as well as other unsolved violent crimes in the city. And we're going to get back to you guys later on with the numbers for that tip line. But we're going to run detectives from the Division of Police will man those lines Sunday from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. And we're asking anybody with information on unsolved homicides or other unsolved violent crimes in the city to give us a call and give us that information. No matter how small or how insignificant you may think that information is, we need that information because we owe it to the people of the city to solve these crimes and bring those people to justice that have committed these crimes. So we are, again, going to get back to you with the numbers for that. We are definitely going to encourage our media partners to be out and film that to let the people know what's going on. But we need the public's help in solving these unsolved crimes here in the city of Cleveland. So we're going to do a question and answer period in a little bit, but I'm going to let Chief Carter from the U.S. Marshals Service talk a little bit about the apprehension in this case. Chief Carter.
Afternoon. First, want to state, acts of violence, senseless violence, such as events that took place on Sunday, will not be tolerated in our community. And when they do, we will use every resource we have to apprehend the fugitives and bring them to justice. As most of you are aware, we were able to apprehend the second fugitive this morning, and that was Mr. Edwards. Mr. Edwards was found in Alabama, right outside of Montgomery, Alabama, at a family's residence. It's my understanding he caught a bus down to Alabama and went to a family member's house. His family tried to do the right thing and get him to turn himself in, but he fled. Once we got the information from our partners from Cleveland Police Department and the citizens, we sent a collateral lead to our fugitive task force down in Florida. They went after it last night. They worked all through the night and was able to apprehend him this morning. Just want to reiterate what the chief said. We can do nothing without the community and our partnerships. Our partnership with Cleveland is a partnership that we seek to have with the community and hope that we can establish that relationship to get these people off the street. And with that, I'll give it back to the mayor.
All right, questions?
Will the tip line be anonymous? A lot of people are concerned about revealing information if they'll be identified.
Yeah, we were having that discussion just before this press conference. All tips that are called into the division are anonymous tips. Unless that person wants to give their personal information, we're not going to require that. Sorry. We're not going to ask for that. It's a tip coming in now. We're not going to ask for your personal information. Any tip that you give, we're going to keep it in the strictest confidence.
What do you owe the low solve rate?
Well, if I knew that, then we'd definitely bump that solve rate up real quickly. But it's always a combination of things. It's a combination of the information, the evidence that detectives have at the scene of a crime. It's definitely a combination of, getting information and tips from people that have that information. And it's also, about how we work our cases. And we're in the process now of revamping some of the way we work homicides in the city, bringing in additional resources and making sure, first and foremost, that we have a better connection to the community when we're reaching out for information on homicide cases.
Do you suspect you're getting less cooperation from the community than you used to?
No, I wouldn't say we're getting less cooperation, but I think sometimes people get into the mindset, well, somebody else is going to call and give that information. There were 5 of us there that saw this thing sitting on our porch, and I'm sure my neighbor is going to call. But we want to make sure people know that everybody that has information needs to make that phone call, not just one person.
Isn't it something about the victim and perpetrator?
Yeah, and a lot of times what we've seen over the last couple of years is that you have victims and suspects, not all the time, but in a lot of cases that are involved in criminal activity. And criminals don't tend to tell on other criminals when things like this happen. So that's why we need the public's help, because as Chief Carter talked about the family of this one suspect in Alabama saying, you need to turn yourself in. I'm sure there are family members out there that aren't involved in the activity itself or any criminal activity that know the things that have happened with these suspects, so they need to give us that information if people aren't willing to come forward.
Do you find that a lot of people aren't coming forward because they don't want to be labeled as snitch?
Well, we've talked about this snitch thing for a long time, and I think we've clarified ad infinitum, difference between a snitch and a person taking care of their community. 2 criminals together doing a crime and they tell on each other, that's snitching. But if I see you committing a crime in my neighborhood that I'm not involved in, that's being a good community member. That's taking care of your community. That's not snitching. So again, anybody that has information can remain anonymous by calling that information in or getting it to somebody else that can get it to us. Before I came to this press conference, I had 2 phone calls on recent homicides in the city with people willing to give information. So we need to definitely keep that going.
And if I may add, when you're walking around and you're talking to people, fear is always an issue. Fear of retaliation and all those kind of things. So what we're attempting to do is to eliminate that fear, whether it's through anonymous calls or relationship with police officers on the street where they know that they can talk to people. They have somebody to talk to with, and knowing it's not going to go anywhere, those kind of things. So eliminating the fear is a major component of us, in my opinion, and the Chief can comment on it, a major component of increasing citizen participation and giving us information. So that has a lot to do with it.
On the 4-year-old shooting, could someone just clarify, it's been called road rage, but in the warrant it appeared that the mom may have known one of the suspects. Is there more to it than a random road rage encounter that anyone can speak to?
Certainly, I'll gladly address that issue. I'm Commander Tom McCartney. The term road rage is a very loose definition. So suffice it to say, it started on a roadway. It involved vehicles. There is no relationship. I want to make that clear. These aren't people who know each other or hang out together. But at that point, to go much further into it, I don't want to disturb the case and be irresponsible as we move forward. Again, suffice it to say, it happened on the road. It started with traffic, but that's the end of it from there.
Chief, you said that you guys are doing, revamping the way you investigate homicides. Could you just talk about a little bit about that, what you're doing differently or not doing?
Well, not to get into a lot of detail because we're still fleshing through some things. About a year ago, we commissioned a study from PERF, Police Executive Research Forum out of Washington, D.C. They took a look at our homicide unit from top to bottom. They reviewed case files of prior homicides, solved homicides, and the way we investigate, the way we engage the community during the first hours of the investigation, and they made some recommendations. So we're in the process of reviewing those recommendations and implementing the ones that we definitely know will help us in solving homicides in the city of Cleveland. And when we get to the point where we can actually roll out implementation of a lot of those recommendations, then we'll come back to you guys and we'll let you know what they are. But I can tell you, for the most part, it really involves assistance from our community. It really involves people understanding, like the mayor talked about, that your tips will remain anonymous, that we're not going to put you out there if you give us information that helps us in solving a homicide and getting a criminal off the streets.
How much of this is a reluctance of people to deal with police after all these incidents nationwide? You tend to hear people say when officers show up, the situation gets worse, not better. And then there's all this anger against the police forces. I think that happens in many cities, including Cleveland. Do you hear any of that?
No, I don't, and I don't think that's the case in Cleveland, especially the recent history of the city. I don't think that's the case. I mean, our officers take great pains to go out there and make sure we mitigate the situation and de-escalate the situation and not add to it. And I think we've been doing a great job over the last couple of years in doing that aspect of the job. I think our community just needs to know that we're out there for them. We're not out there to, just to say we have a better homicide solve rate, but we're out there to actually get people off our streets that shouldn't be in our community and to give closure to those families that have lost loved ones. So it's not about us, it's about the community. And if people understand that, then I don't think we'll have, people basically thinking that it's one thing when it's not. We get a lot of help from our community. This is just an attempt to make sure we get even more assistance in solving these unsolved homicides.
When will that phone number be announced?
We're working on that as we speak. We're going to have several numbers for people to call, and as soon as we get that, we're going to push it out through our communications folks, and then, again, invite you guys to come and film it and help us get the word out for Sunday from 1 to 5. Anything else? All right. Again, before we close this out, I can't stress enough, the professionalism, the hard work and dedication from our guys, partners with the U.S. Marshal Service and our detectives from the 3rd District, as well as other detectives within the Division of Police that immediately, at 2 o'clock in the morning that came over to the 3rd District to assist in this case. And had not been for that, along with our citizens calling in tips, we'd probably still be trying to put this all together. So I just want to stress, it's not done in a vacuum. Police officers just don't go out on their own and solve cases. There's a lot that goes into it with different agencies coming together and also with different units from throughout the division coming together to make sure we get all the information possible to bring closure to these cases. So I want to thank the public for their help and definitely commend these officers and detectives for the hard work they did, the good work that they did. All right.
The suspect was found in Florida, what city?
And
Alabama.
he was found in Alabama.
It's
Right.
Goodwater, Alabama, outside of Montgomery.
Right.
This Sunday,
Okay.
you're hoping to get that out?
Yes, yes. We'll be back to you guys hopefully later on this afternoon with numbers.